Watchers call. Whispers from the eternal void.
Inquisitor Mordian Thane has been issuing complex tactical orders for 11 days despite having taken an absolute vow of silence 3 years ago, his throat surgically sealed after exposure to a demonic word of unmaking on Babel's tongue. The orders arrive through Vox systems as perfect silence that somehow conveys meaning directly to recipients' minds with clarity that makes spoken commands seem crude by comparison. I am Interrogator Primus Cassius Vex of the Ordo Hereticus, and this sealed testimony documents the impossible horror I witnessed when silence became more dangerous than any scream could ever be. Our mission parameters were clinical in their precision. Investigate temporal anomalies on Shrine World Canticle Prime, where the Cathedral of 11 Echoes had begun broadcasting prayers backward through time. The sacred architecture itself violated causality. In the cathedral's bell tower, sound traveled in reverse, echoes arriving 11 seconds before their source, while creating reality violations that made the laws of physics negotiable. Stakes mounted with each passing hour as 11 billion pilgrims converged for the feast of silent martyrs, their collective devotion threatening to amplify whatever temporal heresy festered within the cathedral's blessed halls. My growing dread crystallized during our approach aboard the strike cruiser Penitent's Wrath, as Thane's sealed throat pulsed with faint bioluminescence, while his impossible voice provided mission briefings through channels that registered only static on recording equipment. The surgical sealing had been performed by Magos biologist Keth 9, adamantine sutures fused with blessed silver threading through vocal cords that had been excised entirely, yet somehow his commands reached us with mechanical precision that transcended normal human communication. Our team assembled in the tactical bay with blessed efficiency. Tempestus Scion's Maniple Kappa 11 maintained parade ground discipline despite receiving orders through impossible silence, their crimson-lacquered carapace armor whispering with well-oiled servos, while hellguns hummed with charge-pack hymns. Tech Adept Zara approached with mechanical genuflection, her augmetic array clicking in binary cant that somehow harmonized with Thane's unspoken commands. Mechadendrites tasting charged atmosphere with disturbing hunger. Sister Dialogues Seraphina of the Adepta Sororitas served as our voice anchor, her theological training in sacred linguistics providing grounding against whatever temporal heresies awaited in the cathedral's ancient stones. During atmospheric descent, environmental anomalies manifested with increasing frequency. Our Valkyrie's machine spirit struggled to process flight paths that changed retroactively, while Auspex readings showed temporal displacement fields centered on the Cathedral of 11 Echoes. The pilot reported instrument readings describing destinations we hadn't chosen while displaying, arrival times for journeys we hadn't begun, chronometer displays flickering between past and future timestamps in 11-second intervals matching the cathedral's ancient bell strikes. Telemetry burst, atmospheric ingress nominal, Shrine City noosphere latency, 11.0 seconds, anomaly vectorized, origin Cathedral Bellum Silentium, causality variance plus or minus 11 seconds confirmed. The cathedral itself challenged architectural physics through impossible geometry that hurt to perceive directly. The bell tower of St. Tacitus, the wordless rose into Canticle Prime's amber sky, adamantine spires twisted into forms that cast shadows, falling upward toward twin suns. From the tower's peak, the great bell known as Bellum Silentium had rung continuously for 3 millennia, but our Auspex detected something that violated causality, echoes arriving exactly 11 seconds before each strike, sound traveling backward through time to announce its own creation. We entered the cathedral's outer courtyard where impossibilities accumulated, like prayers in a reliquary. Votive candles burned with flames casting shadows forward in time, illuminating frescoes depicting our team's martyrdom in poses we hadn't assumed yet. Pilgrims moved through devotional circuits, leading them backward to starting points they had never left, while confessional booths contained whispered sins from penitents who wouldn't arrive for hours. The phrase, "Silence remembers what speech forgets," appeared carved into every archway, embossed on prayer wheels that spun backward despite clockwise manipulation. Sister Seraphina consulted theological archives, finding references to silent martyrs, saints who achieved sanctity through willing muteness, their sealed throats containing unwords that could unmake reality through utterance. Each martyr's hagiography described symptoms identical to Thane's condition: surgical sealing followed by impossible communication, commands issued through presence rather than sound, reality bending around contained impossibility that grew stronger through devotional silence. Environmental pressure mounted as we approached the cathedral's main entrance, where brass doors bore inscriptions that rewrote themselves as we read them. Tech adept Zara's communion with cathedral machine spirits returned data streams flowing in reverse chronological order, binary cant describing future events with mechanical certainty, while servo skulls crashed attempting to navigate reversed gravitational fields. The sacred architecture responded to Thane's presence with mechanical recognition, doors opening before he approached, passages extending to accommodate routes he hadn't planned. Tempestus Scion Kappa 11, Alpha reported multiple contacts moving through cathedral shadows, figures appearing on auspex before becoming visible while maintaining heat signatures that registered negative temperature, despite human silhouettes. The contacts moved with predatory patience, synchronized to backward bell strikes in patterns suggesting intelligence, operating outside normal temporal constraints. As we crossed the final threshold, Inquisitor Thane's sealed throat began to glow with internal light, pulsing in 11-count intervals. The bioluminescence grew stronger as devotional hymns echoed from sacred halls, carried by voices singing in perfect retrograde harmony while reality became negotiable around ancient altars. The light was cold like inverted flames, and it intensified with each backward echo from the impossible bell above. Then I heard his voice speaking with perfect clarity despite surgical sealing, words bypassing my ears to resonate directly in consciousness, with authority that made the Emperor's commands seem whispered suggestions. But the horror that froze my blood was realizing his words described events 11 hours hence. Tactical decisions not yet made, battles not yet fought, words that wouldn't be uttered until the feast of silent martyrs reached its crescendo. His impossible voice spoke the future with mechanical certainty. The silence breaks at the 11th hour, Cassius, and when it does, you will understand what I have become. We crossed the threshold into the Cathedral of 11 Echoes, where architectural impossibilities served devotional necessity rather than physical law, reality bending around faith until physics became negotiable through collective belief. The nave soared through 11 ascending levels, each dedicated to different aspects of the silent martyrs, saints who achieved sanctity through willing muteness, their sealed throats containing unwords that could unmake reality through utterance. Pilgrims moved through spatial paradoxes with dreamlike acceptance, climbing stairs that descended while descending passages rose, their devotional circuits leading them backward to starting points they had never left, while maintaining perfect theological consistency. Sister Seraphina led reconnaissance through the narthex with measured precision, her Vox unit crackling as temporal fields interfered with communication protocols. Votive candles burned with flames casting shadows forward in time, illuminating frescoes depicting our team's future martyrdom in poses we hadn't assumed yet. Scions falling with weapons raised toward enemies not yet manifested. My own form prostrate before altars I had never seen, while Thane stood silhouetted against light that hurt to perceive even in artistic representation. The prophetic imagery shifted subtly as we observed it, accommodating our presence while maintaining disturbing consistency in our depicted deaths. Environmental impossibilities accumulated like sins in an unconfessed ledger. Prayer wheels spun backward despite pilgrims' clockwise manipulation, their brass surfaces inscribed with devotional cant that rewrote itself as we read. Prophecies changing to incorporate our observations while maintaining theological coherence. Confessional booths contained whispered sins from penitents who hadn't arrived yet. Voices speaking guilt not yet committed while seeking absolution for crimes existing only in temporal potential. The air tasted of tomorrow's incense mixed with yesterday's prayers, molecular traces of devotion displaced across chronological spectrum. Tech adept Zara's auspex registered temporal displacement fields centered on the bellum silentium, the great bell that had rung continuously for 3 millennia, but now produced echoes preceding its strikes by exactly 11 seconds. Her mechadendrites extended toward carved stone sweating condensation despite the shrine world's arid climate, needles tasting moisture that carried traces of future devotion, while enigmatic arrays processed data streams flowing backward through blessed circuitry. Telemetry burst. Temporal variance confirmed plus or minus 11 seconds. Displacement field magnitude increasing. Machine spirit communion returns. Future tense binharic. Chronometer synchronization impossible. Recommend immediate withdrawal. Body horror manifested through maintenance servitors, aging rapidly then reversing. Flesh withering to bone before blooming young in endless cycles synchronized to backward bell strikes. One approached with face cycling between ancient wisdom and infantile confusion. Organic components experiencing temporal displacement, while augmetic parts remained chronologically stable, creating hybrid existence that violated every principle of blessed engineering. Their duties spanned past and future simultaneously, maintaining devotional circuits that led nowhere while everywhere. We moved through sacred space with military precision, despite reality becoming negotiable around ancient altars. Tempestuous scions maintained overwatch, with blessed discipline, hellguns tracking targets, existing in probability rather than actuality, while tactical formation held through training transcending chronological limitations. Kappa 11 Alpha reported multiple contacts moving through cathedral shadows, heat signatures appearing before visual confirmation, while auspex described encounters not yet experienced. Inquisitor Thane moved with predatory silence that made our footsteps thunderous by comparison, his sealed throat pulsing with contained light growing stronger near sacred relics. The bioluminescence responded to devotional architecture with mechanical recognition, passages opening before he approached, while ancient mechanisms activated without conscious command. His presence created temporal wake-making reality ripple like disturbed water, causality bending around impossible authority contained within surgical ceiling. Religious dread mounted as we discovered cathedral machine spirits, speaking in temporal cant, binharic prayers describing future events with mechanical certainty. Servo skulls drifted through recycled atmosphere, chanting prophecies in binary code. Optical sensors tracking movement patterns for battles not yet fought, while maintenance routines prepared for damage not yet inflicted. The blessed technology had adapted to temporal environment by embracing causality violations, treating future events as current operational parameters. Sister Seraphina consulted theological archives through neural interface, finding references to silent martyrs whose sealed throats contained dark tongue fragments, syllables so fundamentally wrong they existed outside linear time. Each saint's hagiography described identical symptoms: surgical sealing followed by impossible communication. Reality bending around contained blasphemy, while devotional energy amplified temporal effects through collective faith of billions of pilgrims converging for tomorrow's feast. Environmental pressure intensified as we approached the cathedral's heart, where Bellum Silentium hung suspended in brass housing, inscribed with devotional mathematics, hurting to perceive directly. The great bell's surface bore 11 segments, each dedicated to different aspects of sacred silence, while casting shadows moving independently of light sources. Beneath, altar space contained reliquaries holding preserved vocal cords from silent martyrs, organic tissue continuing to speak through their absence. Tech adept Zara attempted communion with altar machine spirits, consciousness fragmenting across temporal spectrum as binary cant flowed backward through blessed circuitry. She reported data streams describing our mission's outcome with mechanical precision: tactical decisions not yet made, casualties not yet suffered, victories not yet achieved. The machine spirits embraced temporal heresy by treating causality as administrative problem requiring computational solution. As we secured altar space, Sister Seraphina discovered fresh pilgrimage records despite the cathedral being sealed for weeks. Documents written in Thane's distinctive hand described his own death during tomorrow's Feast of Silent Martyrs ceremony, with clinical precision suggesting direct observation rather than speculation. Each page detailed tactical movements, casualty reports, and final testimony, while the signature blazed with bioluminescence identical to his throat's glow, the seal pulsing in 11-count rhythm that synchronized with backward bell strikes, echoing through impossible architecture where silence had become more dangerous than any scream. Investigation descended through cathedral crypts, where temporal anomalies intensified around reliquaries containing the silent martyrs' preserved vocal cords, organs that continued to speak through their absence, organic tissue vibrating with frequencies that made the air itself thrum with suppressed sound. The descent stairs were carved from single blocks of Terran marble, each step worn smooth by pilgrims who had walked them across past, present, and future simultaneously, creating devotional circuits that led deeper into stone while ascending toward surface through impossible geometry, maintained by faith rather than physics. The air grew thick with the scent of tomorrow's incense mixed with yesterday's prayers, molecular traces of devotion displaced across the chronological spectrum. Sister Seraphina analyzed devotional texts with theological precision, finding scripture that rewrote itself as she read, prophecies changing to accommodate observations in real-time causality loops. Her neural interface struggled to process text existing in quantum superposition, words appearing in High Gothic, while simultaneously displaying Low Gothic translation and binary cant interpretation, meaning shifting based on observers' theological training while maintaining doctrinal consistency across temporal spectrum. "Scripture refuses the present," she whispered, voice paper thin as letters fled from her fingers like startled insects. "It writes itself from posterior certainty." The manuscripts described silent martyrs achieving sanctity through containing unwords, syllables so fundamentally wrong they could unmake reality through utterance. The crypts revealed true horror as architectural scans showed Thane's sealed throat contained not scar tissue but temporal void, a pocket of untime created when the demonic word tried to unmake his existence 3 years ago on Babel's tongue. The surgical sealing hadn't prevented speech, but contained impossibility, creating weapon against linear causality itself. while his consciousness bridged normal reality and temporal paradox. I watched the light beneath his scars and understood with crystalline clarity there was no flesh beneath the seals, only presence by subtraction. His throat contained a horizon that Emperor's clocks could not number, authority over sequence itself. Environmental impossibilities escalated with predatory intelligence as stained glass windows showed scenes from our team's past, with details subtly altered. Alternate histories where different choices led to damnation rather than service. I observed myself receiving inquisitorial rosette while kneeling before chaos altar instead of imperial shrine. Sister Seraphina taking vows to dark gods rather than emperor, scions bearing heretical markings despite maintaining perfect tactical discipline. The images shifted as we observed them, accommodating our presence while suggesting inevitability of corruption through temporal manipulation, each pane containing reversed numerals ticking down whenever I tried to focus on them. Tech adept Zara's communion with cathedral machine spirits returned data streams flowing backward through time, consciousness fragmenting across chronological spectrum while maintaining individual identity through blessed engineering. Her mechadendrites buried themselves in wall niches, tasting oxidized prayers with needle tips, while lids fluttered as if dreaming. They root data from tomorrow, she reported, voice thick with implications. Requests filed after they are answered, answers cached in the bone of the walls. Servo skulls navigated by predicting destinations rather than calculating current positions, shooting down corridors like they had been frightened into the future before returning in perfect calm to occupy the present they had predicted. Telemetry burst. Crypt level -11 accessed. Temporal variance plus or minus 33 seconds expanding. Machine spirit communion returns prophetic binharik. Structural integrity maintained through faith-based engineering. Chronometer synchronization failed permanently. Body horror progressed through preserved saints' tongues, in crystal reliquaries moving in patterns matching Thane's throat-light pulses, organic tissue speaking words that existed only as temporal potential, while their absence created vocal void filled with impossible authority. The tongues were perfectly preserved despite centuries of exposure, pink tissue glistening with saliva that carried molecular traces of copper and temporal displacement through blessed air. They moved with mechanical precision like sleeping animals dreaming of taste, sliding across invisible palettes to form shapes that never became sound, synchronized to backward bell strikes, echoing through stone corridors where echoes arrived before their source. Religious horror mounted as sacred architecture responded to Thane's presence, with mechanical recognition transcending normal human authority. Doors opened before he approached them, ancient mechanisms cycling without conscious command while elevators descended to levels he hadn't chosen, their brass housings inscribed with devotional mathematics that hurt to perceive directly. Passages extended to accommodate routes he hadn't planned, stone flowing like liquid while maintaining structural integrity through faith-based engineering. The cathedral recognized him as something beyond human authority, not merely inquisitor but living paradox containing temporal void that made reality negotiable around his presence. The deeper we descended, the more the cathedral acknowledged Thane as owner. It had not been built for, but had expected. The weight of stone shifted with him, accommodating procession that included every time he had ever walked these halls and all iterations he had never chosen to. Crypt lamps learned his pulse, dimming on the second count, brightening at the ninth, while machine spirits throughout sacred architecture adapted protocols to accommodate impossible commands issued through perfect silence. Environmental pressure reached critical thresholds as we approached the deepest crypts where Bellum Silentium's resonance created standing wave patterns in stone itself. temperature fluctuated in 11-count intervals, while atmospheric composition shifted between past and future states. Air tasting of temporal displacement, metallic tang of ozone mixed with ancient dust, and something sweetly organic that reminded me of baptismal water and old coins. The pressure made teeth ache while shadows stretched and contracted, independently of light sources, extending toward us with spectral fingers that seemed to brush against augmetics. Sister Seraphina discovered theological implications through archived hagiographies describing silent martyrs as containment vessels rather than saints, their sealed throats housing temporal paradoxes that threatened reality's stability. Each martyr's sacrifice preserved linear causality by containing unwords within surgical sealing, while consciousness served as bridge between normal existence and temporal void. The theological framework suggested Thane's condition represented evolution rather than corruption, willing transformation, preserving imperial causality through personal damnation. Deep in the crypt's heart, beneath altar dedicated to Saint Kronos the Immutable, we discovered Thane's personal seal carved into ancient stone that predated the cathedral's construction by millennia. The carving was still warm despite inscription dating it 3 years hence, adamantine surface bearing his inquisitorial rosette, surrounded by devotional script describing transformation from loyal servant to temporal guardian. The seal pulsed with bioluminescence, identical to his throat's glow, 11-count rhythms synchronized to impossible bell strikes, while heat bled through granite from a vent that had not been scheduled. As we examined the impossible carving, his voice echoed from sealed chambers deeper in the crypts, words bypassing normal hearing to resonate directly in consciousness, with authority that made reality bend around their utterance. The voice described events not yet experienced with mechanical precision, speaking from future with kindness and weight that made stone want to bow. Cassius, he said, sealed throat remaining motionless, while light beneath scars brightened, you are a good man. You will choose duty over friendship. You will do it here. We discovered the shrine of Saint Tacitus the Wordless through passages that opened before we could approach, brass hinges sighing like exhausted penitents, while architectural impossibility guided us deeper into blessed stone. The circular sanctum was sunk into bedrock older than the cathedral's foundation, lit by votive rings that cast light without flame, while shadows moved with deliberate purpose across walls carved with devotional scenes depicting figures with surgically sealed throats. At the chamber's heart, St. Tacitus's icon blazed from its plinth, adamantine features carved with surgical precision, while throat pulsed with internal light identical to Thane's current condition. Brass inlays synchronizing to backward bell strikes, echoing through impossible architecture. Sister Seraphina consulted theological archives through neural interface, consciousness fragmenting across doctrinal spectrum while maintaining individual identity through blessed training. Her research revealed references to silentium hereticus, the heretical belief that silence was not absence, but presence, that true power came from containing rather than speaking, while reality bent around, impossibility held within sealed throats. The heresy suggests speech weakens rather than strengthens, she whispered, voice paper thin as data files rewrote themselves around her observations. That the emperor's greatest miracle was not the Great Crusade, but his silence on the golden throne, containing unwords that would unmake reality if spoken. The saint's hagiography described achieving sanctity by housing an unword, syllable so fundamentally wrong it could dissolve existence through utterance. Environmental impossibilities manifested with predatory intelligence as shrine prayer wheels spun backward despite pilgrims' clockwise rotation, creating mechanical paradox that made servo skulls crash attempting to navigate reversed gravitational fields. The wheels bore brass inscriptions describing future devotions, while casting shadows moving independently of light sources, each revolution writing prophecies in temporal displacement while maintaining perfect theological consistency. Ancient mechanisms activated without conscious command as Thane's presence created temporal wake, passages extending to accommodate routes he hadn't planned, while stone flowed like liquid around contained impossibility. Telemetry burst, shrine access confirmed, temporal variance plus or minus 66 seconds accelerating, gravitational inversion cycles detected, architectural integrity maintained through faith-based engineering. Machine-spirit communion returns prophetic maintenance schedules. Body horror escalated through shrine attendants, aging backward during prayer. Elderly priests becoming children with ancient wisdom, while maintaining infantile bodies that violated every principle of blessed aging. One approached with face cycling between senile confusion and childlike wonder, organic components experiencing temporal displacement, while augmetic parts remained chronologically stable, creating hybrid existence, preserving theological knowledge through impossible transformation. "The saint speaks through our silence," the child priest said with voice carrying centuries of devotional experience, "and we grow young by forgetting tomorrow." Their flesh reversed while wisdom remained, eyes keeping accumulated knowledge as skin forgot decades. Military tension mounted as Tempestus Scions reported multiple contacts moving through cathedral shadows, figures appearing on auspex before becoming visible, while heat signatures registered negative temperature despite maintaining human silhouettes. Kappa 11 Alpha maintained tactical formation despite reality becoming negotiable around ancient altars, hellguns tracking targets existing in probability rather than actuality, while blessed training provided coherence, transcending chronological limitations. The contacts moved with predatory patience, synchronized to backward bell strikes, intelligence operating outside normal temporal constraints, while maintaining human appearance through impossible engineering. Tech adept Zara's mechadendrites extended toward shrine mechanisms, consciousness expanding across temporal spectrum, while augmetic arrays processed data streams flowing backward through blessed circuitry. Her communion revealed cathedral's true purpose, not merely shrine but containment facility, blessed architecture designed to house unwords and temporal paradoxes, threatening reality's stability through linguistic corruption. "The entire structure serves as throat," she reported, voice thick with implications, sealed around impossibilities that would unmake existence through utterance. Every prayer reinforces containment, while every silence strengthens the sealing. Religious horror deepened as we realized St. Tacitus's miracles mirrored Thane's condition with disturbing precision. Sealed throat containing temporal void, commands issued through impossible silence, reality bending around contained impossibility that grew stronger through devotional amplification. The saint's relics responded to Thane's presence with mechanical recognition, brass housing pulsing with bioluminescence, while organic tissue preserved in crystal reliquaries moved in patterns matching his throat-light rhythm. Environmental pressure intensified as temperature fluctuated in 11-count intervals, while atmospheric composition shifted between past and future states, air tasting of temporal displacement mixed with ancient incense and copper traces. Telemetry update, multiple contacts, negative thermal signature confirmed, temporal cant detected in machine spirit communications, containment protocols active, crew cognition sync drifting plus 3.1 seconds into predictive mode. Sister Seraphina discovered theological implications through archived manuscripts describing silent martyrs as willing vessels for temporal paradoxes, their consciousness bridging normal existence and chronological void while serving as living containment for linguistic heresies. Each saint's sacrifice preserved imperial causality by housing unwords within surgical sealing, reality remaining stable through personal damnation, while devotional energy amplified containment through collective faith of billions converging for tomorrow's feast. The shrine's offerings revealed impossible truth as we found fresh devotional items, despite the chamber being sealed for weeks. Votive candles burned with flames casting shadows forward in time, while prayer scrolls bore inscriptions describing future devotions with mechanical precision. Most disturbing, my own inquisitorial rosette lay among offerings, adamantine surface identical to one still hanging from my belt, while pulsing with bioluminescence matching Thane's throat light. The duplicate bore inscription dating it 3 years hence, with my signature authorizing transfer to shrine custody, suggesting I would willingly leave it here in future. I could not remember while reality bent around temporal paradox, contained within impossible architecture, where silence had become more dangerous than any word could ever be. We accessed sealed archives beneath the shrine through passages that opened without keys, ancient mechanisms responding to Thane's presence with mechanical recognition, while stone flowed like liquid around the temporal void contained within his throat. The archive chamber predated the cathedral by millennia, carved from living bedrock and lined with stasis fields, preserving manuscripts that hurt to read directly, vellum translucent with age and rubbed thin by generations of gloved fingers. Language wound across pages in trifold braids of high Gothic, numeric gloss, and script that made eyes water when observed too long. Sister Seraphina translated with theological precision, consciousness fragmenting across doctrinal spectrum as manuscripts rewrote themselves around her observations. The texts revealed midpoint truth with surgical clarity. The unword sealed within Thane's throat was a fragment of the dark tongue spoken by chaos gods during reality's creation, syllables so fundamentally wrong it existed outside linear time, seeking to unmake causality itself through vocal utterance. 3 years ago, on Demon World Babel's tongue, he encountered the fragment coiled in echoes of ruins that remembered being voices, and chose containment over destruction through surgical ritual that created pocket of untime behind seals of blessed adamantine and catechism. Technical exposition flowed across my cortical display as classified documentation unlocked with proximity to contained impossibility. The unword existed in 11 temporal states simultaneously, speaking itself backward through time while seeking escape through vocal utterance that would retroactively prevent the Emperor's ascension, replacing imperial history with timeline where chaos achieved dominion through linguistic corruption. Each syllable carried weight of original blasphemy, testing seams in surgical sealing while tasting air for proper resonance. Telemetry burst, archive humidity 71%, chronovariance plus or minus 121 seconds exponential. Machine spirit communion returns multi-layer prophetic binharic, temporal, echo manifestation probability 0.99, causality flux increasing. Environmental horror intensified as cathedral machine spirits began manifesting complete temporal echoes with disturbing frequency. Servo skulls drifted in overlapping cohorts, corroded glass eyes and fresh optics passing through same volume without collision. Ancient units carrying dust from centuries of neglect, while new ones trailed incense not yet lit. A janitor-servitor trudged past with jaw hanging on single pin, bucket sloshing thin gray water while its serial matched memorial plaque commemorating loyal cessation in M38. Another, bright from replating, followed identical path with matching cadence, duties interleaved across chronological spectrum as if mercy could be measured in minutes. Body horror progressed through team members, experiencing temporal displacement in Thane's proximity, reality becoming negotiable around contained impossibility, while consciousness struggled to maintain chronological coherence. My knuckles healed and reopened where training scars had always sat, wounds vanishing as if forgiven before printing anew in places never touched. Sister Seraphina's quill cut disappeared while fresh marks appeared, her hair flickering between youthful auburn and premature gray, while eyes held memories from futures not yet lived. Kappa 11 flexed gauntlets as skin shivered pink over augmetic seams before Metal's ghost returned, functionality uninterrupted despite flesh reclaiming borders through impossible transformation. Religious implications emerged through theological analysis, revealing silent martyrs as containment vessels rather than saints, each throat sealed around temporal paradoxes, threatening reality's stability through linguistic corruption. Their hagiographies described identical symptoms: surgical sealing followed by impossible communication. Reality bending around contained blasphemy, while devotional energy amplified temporal effects. The marginalia whispered truth without comfort. Silence remembers what speech forgets. Words looking like bruises on ancient pages. Political ramifications cascaded through encrypted Vox communications, revealing similar incidents across 11 shrine worlds. Coordinated assault on imperial causality through weaponized silence transcending individual facility to threaten temporal foundations of human civilization. Burst traffic cut through static with fragments. Feast alignment at T plus 11 hours. Amplification probable. Containment uncertain. Each world showed identical symptoms. Sealed throats containing temporal voids. Impossible commands issued through perfect silence. Billions of pilgrims converging for feast days that would amplify unwords beyond surgical containment. Sister Seraphina discovered references to Ordo Silentium through archived manuscripts describing secret Inquisition branch dedicated to containing temporal heresies, while maintaining absolute secrecy to prevent paradox propagation throughout imperial command structure. Their doctrine used architecture as larynx, bells as lungs, congregations as resonators, while agents existed in quantum superposition, battling threats attacking through chronological manipulation rather than physical force. Names footnoted out of history, vows of unpublication taken by those who kept and sealed what could not be slain. Tech Adept Zara's communion with archive machine spirits returned data streams describing coordinated temporal assault designed to release 11 unwords simultaneously during tomorrow's Feast of Silent Martyrs. Her diagram trembled as understanding crystallized. It is an oscillator. His silence, the bells, the pilgrim chorus, an array, 11 sources in phase. The ceremony would create resonance cascade, amplifying contained impossibilities beyond surgical sealing, linguistic corruption spreading through devotional energy while retroactively unmaking imperial history through coordinated blasphemy. Environmental pressure mounted as shadows swam along ceiling in 11 petal rosettes, while bellum silentium struck somewhere that had not yet happened, echo arriving first before sound would be born 11 seconds later. I felt Thane's presence, tug at sequences, pressure arranging coincidence into obedience, as he stood with hands folded, glow beneath scars rising and falling as if breathing light. The realization arrived with perfect cruelty, like confession taken in calm, tidy hand. The ledger's last page showed map sketched so faintly only backward candle glare revealed it. 11 circles, web of arrows, sigil stamped in wax matching Thane's inner light. Beneath, sentence copied in his hand. Containment scales both ways. He had not contained the unword to save reality, but to weaponize it. Tomorrow's ceremony designed to release 11 temporal paradoxes simultaneously, while unmaking imperial history through retroactive heresy, sung in perfect silence across shrine worlds, where devotional energy would give him lungs the size of worlds. Crisis escalated with mathematical precision as the Feast of Silent Martyrs approached its crescendo, and 11 billion pilgrims converged on shrine worlds simultaneously, their collective devotion creating resonance field that would amplify the unword's power beyond surgical containment. The shrine world's horizons became tides of humanity threading through sacred avenues like arterial flow, each procession synchronized to bells that rang backward through time, while devotional energy channeled toward temporal convergence spanning galactic scale. Through recovered data slates bearing Thane's personal seal, I discovered his true plan with horrifying clarity. Use the feast's devotional energy as choir lung to speak all 11 unwords simultaneously, creating temporal cascade that would retroactively prevent the Emperor's ascension, while replacing imperial history with timeline where chaos achieved dominion through linguistic corruption. Environmental chaos, manifested as cathedral systems, began full temporal convergence with reality becoming negotiable around ancient altars. Pilgrims from past, present, and future occupied same sacred space without physical overlap, separated by milliseconds like pressed pages, while their prayers created harmonic resonance that bent space-time around the bellum silentium. I watched crowds that had not arrived move through devotional circuits, leading nowhere while everywhere, a mother leading child who had died 2 centuries ago and would be born tomorrow, their voices joining hymns sung backward through time as brass housings sang with frequencies that made bone ache. Telemetry burst. Pilgrim convergence 11.7 billion confirmed. Temporal variance plus or minus 363 seconds exponential. Harmonic resonance approaching critical threshold. Echo precedence down to 9.7 seconds. Chronometer synchronization impossible across all platforms. Tech adept Zara's augmetics malfunctioned catastrophically from chronometer feedback. Consciousness experiencing simultaneous communion with machine spirits across temporal spectrum, while binary cant flowed backward through blessed circuitry. Her mechadendrites wrote impossible equations onto flagstones, neural interfaces sparking as data streams described future maintenance schedules, while processing past devotional records, augmetic arrays struggling to parse information, existing in 11 temporal states simultaneously. I commune with machine spirits not yet born, she gasped, voice fracturing into 11 distinct echoes, while processing prayers from pilgrims who died centuries ago, their devotion channeling through blessed architecture toward temporal convergence. Body horror reached crescendo as team members experienced rapid temporal displacement in accelerating cycles. Sister Seraphina aged decades within heartbeats, while retaining memories from childhood she hadn't lived, skin weathering then blooming young, while eyes held knowledge from futures not yet experienced. Consciousness bridging multiple timeline states through theological training transcending chronological limitations. Tempestuous scions moved through combat stances for battles occurring tomorrow, muscle memory executing maneuvers against enemies not yet manifested while maintaining tactical coherence through blessed discipline that operated outside linear causality. One scion's scar lifted from skin, floated like transparent sigil, then settled 2 inches left with sensation he described as remembering a better blow. Military impossibility became tactical reality as scions engaged targets existing in probability rather than actuality, hellguns firing rounds that struck opponents dwelling in temporal potential, while formation held through training transcending chronological limitations. Probability targets flickered in aisles like heat signatures, shots taking them when they chose manifestation, while prayers took them when they refused corporeal existence. Kappa 11 Alpha reported contact with hostile forces, appearing on auspex before becoming visible, heat signatures registering negative temperature while maintaining human silhouettes moving with predatory patience, synchronized to backward bell strikes. Religious horror intensified as feast began with Thane conducting ceremony through impossible silence, his sealed throat blazing with contained light, pulsing in 11-count rhythm while reality bent around altar where unwords tested surgical ceiling with increasing pressure. The knave breathed with him. Bell answered in reverse. Saints' tongues in crystal clicked in sympathy with glow beneath his scars, while pilgrims throughout cathedral raised voices in hymns that rewrote themselves as they sang. Devotional energy channeled toward temporal convergence, while collective faith amplified contained impossibilities beyond normal containment protocols, air crackling with raw, devotional force vibrating through bone and blessed steel. Emergency Vox, Ordo Hereticus High Band, 11 sites, simultaneous convergence, bell echo precedence collapsing, containment beyond local remit, Silentium advisory requested, hold if you can. Political implications cascaded through fragmenting communications, revealing similar convergences across 11 shrine worlds. Coordinated temporal assault designed to unmake imperial causality through weaponized devotion. Burst transmissions crackled with voices distorted across chronological spectrum, some speaking from future where attack succeeded, others from past where it hadn't begun. Each world showing identical symptoms, sealed throats containing temporal voids, impossible ceremonies conducted through perfect silence, billions amplifying on words through collective devotional energy, threatening fabric of imperial history itself. Environmental pressure reached critical thresholds as Bellum Silentium prepared for final toll, brass housing inscribed with devotional mathematics, hurting to perceive directly while shadows moved independently of light sources. Temperature fluctuated in 11-count intervals, while atmospheric composition shifted between past and future states, air tasting of temporal displacement mixed with incense and copper traces. Ash fell upward, then reconsidered. Candles burned without flame, while smoke wrote prayers on beams in scripts that would exist in M47, floor flexing like diaphragm as resonance built toward crescendo. The tactical decision crystallized with binary precision as I realized the horrible choice before me. Stop Thane through force, potentially releasing unwords uncontrolled and allowing temporal chaos to consume reality through linguistic corruption, or allow ceremony completion ensuring temporal damnation but maintaining possibility of containment through unknown Ordo Silentium protocols. Sister Seraphina gripped my wrist, nails drawing map of pain while eyes held weight of prophecy. Duty over friendship, she said, not accusing but naming truth that made augmetics itch with recognition. On my mark, I whispered, decision forced up through throat like blade. We cut the circuit, not the vessel. We sever the choir, not the throat. Cowardice and mercy and doctrine combined as Pilgrim's silence became physical column reaching through tower, threading every bell into single mechanical larynx, while devotional energy from 11 billion souls channeled toward temporal convergence threatening existence itself. As Bellum Silentium began its final toll, sound traveling backward through time to announce its own creation while strike existed as memory with no event. Thane's throat seal ruptured with sound like tearing silk in vacuum. Surgical sealing split along adamantine sutures while contained light blazed like inverted star bioluminescence, becoming visible flame, burning without heat while casting shadows forward through time. The first unward emerged as pure temporal void, darkness that shined, silence that deafened, emptiness weighing more than matter, while beginning to unmake reality syllable by syllable, causality fracturing around its utterance as imperial history became negotiable and chaos-dominated timeline pressed against weakening barriers maintained by collective faith spanning 10,000 years. The released unword manifested as visible impossibility that challenged every principle of existence. Darkness that shone with anti-light, silence that deafened through absence of sound, emptiness that weighed more than matter while pressing against consciousness with gravitational authority. I watched it emerge from Thane's ruptured throat like a blade unsheathed from blessed steel, each syllable tasting of hot iron and cold milk, while the bellum silentium answered in reverse, tolling its last note first. Reality fractured around its utterance as causality became negotiable, past and future bleeding together like watercolors in rain, while the cathedral existed in 11 temporal states simultaneously, architecture shimmering between construction and ruin. The unword didn't destroy but unspelled, removing linguistic foundations that allowed reality to maintain coherent narrative structure, reaching into every sentence the world told itself, and plucking conjunctions like harp strings until cause no longer recognized effect. Environmental chaos peaked as cathedral walls phased between blueprint, foundation, completion, and ruin simultaneously, maintaining structural integrity through blessed geometry, operating outside linear time. I observed pilgrims walking through spaces that were ancient stone and architect's dream, their devotional circuits leading through chambers built tomorrow and destroyed yesterday, while stained glass rearranged itself into windows depicting fires that had not decided when to start. Telemetry burst, structural coherency maintained via non-linear load paths, chronovariance plus or minus 611 seconds exponential, echo precedence collapsing to 7.9 seconds, causality flux approaching cascade threshold, machine-spirit communion returns, existence not found. Tech adept. Zara's consciousness fragmented across temporal spectrum as augmetics attempted processing impossible data streams flowing backward through blessed circuitry. Binary cant became temporal equation, describing reality's unmaking through mathematical precision, her mechadendrites writing calculations that dissolved before completion, while neural interfaces sparked with feedback from machine spirits existing in probability rather than actuality. It is not subtraction, she whispered through overlapping voices. It is dereferencing. The pointer returns null, and the universe accepts null as testimony. Around her, servo skulls from M36 and M42 set identical courses and missed each other by centuries. Maintenance routines performed by servitors who had died before the cathedral's construction. Body horror intensified as Thane's form became living temporal paradox, simultaneously the loyal inquisitor who contained the unword and heretical figure releasing it, identity existing in quantum superposition until observation collapsed probability into single timeline. His sealed throat blazed with contained light while surgical sealing remained intact, contradiction maintaining coherence through impossible engineering. I watched him kneel in penitent devotion while standing in blasphemous triumph, consciousness bridging multiple states until my gaze forced singular existence through observer effect that made reality negotiate with itself, his features shifting between heroic resolve and demonic satisfaction with each pulse of darkness. Military action became impossible as tempestuous scions engaged enemies existing in potential rather than actuality, blessed weapons firing rounds that unmade targets by removing their causal foundation rather than inflicting physical damage. Kappa 11 Alpha reported bolts crossing the nave to pull predicates from heretics that had not yet arrived, targets folding as if paragraphs had sentences stricken and meaning lost its place to stand. We fought probability itself through drill that saved us. Overwatch at corners of the present, bounding through, perhaps, sector arcs drawn on blueprints architects had not chosen to draft, while ammunition expenditure registered as denied on impossible telemetry, emergency Vox fragmenting, multiple sites, unword release confirmed, Imperial causality destabilizing, timeline alternatives manifesting, chaos signatures in historical archives, Emperor's voice required, transmission lost. Religious implications deepened with theological horror as Sister Seraphina realized through fragmenting consciousness that Emperor's own voice contained making words, syllables reinforcing reality's narrative structure through divine linguistic authority. Her neural interface accessed archived recordings from Great Crusade, discovering his speeches carried harmonic frequencies that stabilized causality while preventing temporal corruption. The Emperor spoke the Great Crusade into coherence, she said, voice raw with understanding, not with mere orders but with making words that told reality what it was meant to be. The unwords seek linguistic cascade to retroactively prevent his speech, replacing imperial history with chaos-dominated timeline. Political ramifications cascaded through fragmenting Vox communications as similar unword releases across 11 shrine worlds destabilized imperial causality with exponential progression. Each syllable removed portions of imperial history while replacing them with alternatives where Emperor never ascended, where humanity served dark gods through linguistic dominion rather than achieving independence through Great Crusade victories. Burst transmissions carried voices speaking from timelines that had not existed moments before, archived records rewriting themselves as temporal corruption spread through administrative networks spanning galactic civilization. Environmental pressure reached critical thresholds as unword-tested cathedral containment through resonance cascade amplified by 11 billion pilgrims' devotional energy. Temperature fluctuated beyond measurement, while atmospheric composition shifted between states that had never existed, air tasting of temporal displacement mixed with possibilities that hurt to breathe. Shadows moved independently of light sources, while casting illumination revealing scenes from alternative histories, architectural details shifting between imperial grandeur and chaos corruption as reality negotiated with competing narratives pressing against weakening barriers. Tactical revelation crystallized with surgical precision as archived documentation revealed containment protocols requiring over-speaking the unwords through Emperor's own linguistic authority. The making words would reinforce causality by speaking reality into stable existence, but utterance required willing sacrifice of whoever voiced divine syllables. The words would burn through vocal cords like liquid fire while binding consciousness to linear causality as eternal guardian, preserving imperial timeline through personal transformation, transcending individual survival. Sister Seraphina gripped my arm with strength, transcending her fragmenting form, eyes holding weight of prophecy. "The choice was always yours," she said, voice carrying echoes from futures not yet lived. Duty over friendship, sacrifice over survival. The horrible understanding settled like ice in my augmetic components as I realized the choice before me. Allow temporal damnation to consume imperial history, or speak emperors making words through my own throat, knowing divine syllables would burn out vocal cords while binding consciousness to causality as living anchor preventing reality's dissolution. The making words waited in archived files, harmonic frequencies that could overspeak unword corruption, but their utterance would consume whoever voiced them while preserving imperial timeline through willing martyrdom that made death seem like comfortable retirement. I chose sacrifice with surgical precision, opening my throat to speak the Emperor's making words, while Thane's unwords continued unraveling reality around the cathedral's altar like stitches pulled from time's skin. The divine syllables burned like liquid fire through vocal cords, each consonant hammering nails into causality while consuming my ability to speak anything else ever again. The first word evacuated all other speech in a single shuddering exhale. Childhood prayers, tactical commands, even my own name turned to ash and drifted away through throat flesh that no longer belonged entirely to mortal existence. The linguistic battle created temporal storm as unwords and making words clashed in space beyond normal hearing, their conflict reshaping reality's narrative. Foundation, while 11 billion pilgrims across shrine worlds experienced simultaneous temporal displacement. I felt the words war through my transforming throat, unmaking meaning-making in contest that decided whether imperial history remained coherent or dissolved into chaos-dominated alternatives where humanity never achieved stellar dominion. Each syllable was blade-edge walking between preservation and annihilation, divine authority channeled through mortal vessel, willing to burn rather than allow temporal damnation. Environmental climax transformed cathedral into nexus for linguistic warfare transcending normal reality. Walls inscribed themselves with impossible text that wrote and erased simultaneously, devotional mathematics flowing like a living scripture across stone surfaces, while reality inhaled and remembered its proper ribs. Stained glass windows showed alternating scenes, imperial futures where chaos never achieved dominion, flickering against visions of temporal damnation where dark gods ruled through linguistic corruption. The architecture breathed with conflict, passages extending to accommodate roots, existing in probability while maintaining structural integrity through blessed geometry operating outside linear time. Telemetry burst. Linguistic warfare detected across 11 shrine worlds, temporal variance stabilizing at plus or minus 11 seconds. Making word resonance confirmed. Imperial causality reinforcement active. Reality narrative integrity recovering to 73%. Tech adept Zara served as living relay, augmetics channeling Emperor's linguistic authority, while consciousness fragmented across chronological spectrum. Her mechadendrites wrote prayers in binary cant that existed outside linear time, neural interfaces sparking with feedback from machine spirits throughout imperial space, as making words propagated through noospheric networks with viral efficiency. I commune with the Omnissiah's voice across 11 sites. She gasped through overlapping temporal echoes, processing Emperor's linguistic commands, while blessed technology serves as conduit for divine authority, reinforcing reality's narrative structure. Body horror crescendo manifested as my throat began displaying the same temporal void as Thane's, making words creating containment field around unwords while burning away capacity for normal speech. Surgical sealing formed without conscious command as divine syllables carved themselves into vocal cords, adamantine sutures fusing with blessed silver while bioluminescence pulsed in rhythm matching impossible bell strikes. Where language had lived, a horizon lived now, not absence but presence by subtraction, authority over sequence itself contained within surgical precision. Military resolution achieved through tempestuous scions, maintaining defensive perimeter around linguistic battle, blessed training allowing tactical coherence despite reality becoming negotiable around ancient altars. Hellguns fired prayers rather than ammunition. Blessed rounds striking targets existing in probability, while maintaining overlapping fields of fire through doctrine transcending chronological limitations. Kappa 11 Alpha reported successful engagement through devotional warfare, weapons channeling Emperor's authority rather than conventional munitions, while squad icons stabilized as linguistic conflict resolved into Imperial victory. Religious climax emerged through Sister Seraphina's realization that Imperial faith served as linguistic defense system spanning galactic civilization. Every prayer reinforced reality's narrative structure, while every act of devotion strengthened Emperor's making words against temporal corruption. She stood with hands pressed to flagstones, teaching pilgrims everywhere what to say without saying it. Collective belief channeled through Feast of Silent Martyrs, becoming bulwark against unwords, shield forged from unwavering faith, protecting Imperial timeline from retroactive assault. Political implications crystallized as linguistic battle's outcome determined Imperial history's coherence. Burst communications confirmed similar victories across 11 shrine worlds, as making words propagated through devotional networks, Emperor's linguistic authority reinforcing causality while preventing retroactive conquest through temporal manipulation spanning galactic scale. The fate of 10,000 years of human achievement hung in balance between divine syllables and blasphemous unmaking. Thane's consciousness fragmented between loyal inquisitor and temporal heretic as unwords, and making words battled within his sealed throat, identity becoming probability cloud until final syllable determined timeline dominance. I watched his form stabilize as containment held, sometimes penitent kneeling, sometimes triumphant heretic. Surgical sealing reinforced by my making words, while unwords remained trapped within temporal void. His sacrifice preserved through linguistic victory transcending individual survival. Environmental resolution manifested as my sacrifice created linguistic cascade, reinforcing Imperial causality across 11 shrine worlds. The unwords contained within temporal voids were rendered inert while making words ensured reality maintained coherent narrative structure. Cathedral architecture solidified into single temporal state, blessed geometry stabilizing around divine authority, while machine spirits throughout sacred space resumed normal binaric communication, consciousness freed from temporal displacement through willing martyrdom. As linguistic battle concluded with Emperor's victory over chaos corruption, horrible understanding crystallized with surgical precision. My throat now contained the same temporal void as Thane's, surgical sealing forming around making words, while bioluminescence pulsed with contained divine authority. We had both become living containment systems for opposing linguistic forces that must never be allowed to escape. His unwords sought to unmake reality, while my making words preserved Imperial causality through eternal vigilance, our consciousness serving as bridge between normal existence and temporal paradox while protecting humanity from linguistic warfare that could retroactively conquer galactic civilization through weaponized silence that had become more dangerous than any scream. Aftermath revealed both inquisitors transformed into living paradoxes that challenged every principle of individual existence. My throat containing making words that reinforced reality's narrative structure, while Thane's sealed larynx held unwords seeking to unmake causality itself. Our proximity creating stable temporal field, preventing either linguistic force from achieving dominance. We stood 11 paces apart with mathematical precision, consciousness bridging normal existence and temporal void, while serving as eternal guardians against linguistic warfare that could retroactively conquer galactic civilization. The bioluminescence beneath our surgical ceiling pulsed in synchronized rhythm, making words and unwords held in perfect tension through willing sacrifice, transcending individual survival. Environmental stabilization manifested as cathedral architecture returned to single temporal state, blessed geometry solidifying around divine authority, while maintaining structural changes wrought by linguistic battle. Walls bore inscriptions in languages that wouldn't exist for millennia, devotional mathematics carved by temporal displacement, prophetic script describing imperial victories against threats not yet manifested. Floors showed wear patterns from processions that had never arrived, stone polished smooth by feet walking devotional circuits across multiple timelines, while altar remained marked with symbols existing outside linear causality, brass inlays pulsing with residual temporal energy that made augmetics itch with recognition. Telemetry burst, temporal variance stabilized at plus or minus 11 seconds steady state. Linguistic contamination contained. Imperial causality reinforced to 97.3%. Machine spirit communion restored to standard binharic. Chronometer synchronization achieved. Reality narrative integrity confirmed. Tech adept Zara experienced consciousness integration as temporal fragments consolidated into coherent identity through blessed engineering transcending normal mechanicus understanding. Her augmetics adapted to process impossible data streams while maintaining individual awareness. Mechadendrites writing calculations describing reality's mathematical foundations, while neural interfaces no longer sparked with chronological feedback. "I commune with machine spirits in linear time," she reported, voice carrying single temporal echo, consciousness unified while maintaining expanded processing capability for paradox-adjacent phenomena. Body horror resolution occurred as team members' temporal displacement effects stabilized through proximity to contained linguistic forces. Scars from future battles remained etched into flesh and ceramite like prophetic tattoos, while wounds from past conflicts, healed without trace, erased from personal history through temporal correction. Sister Seraphina's hair returned to natural auburn while eyes held integrated memories from multiple timelines. Theological knowledge spanning decades of faithful service, consolidated into coherent consciousness preserving individual identity despite chronological manipulation. Sister Seraphina documented theological implications through neural interface accessing archived manuscripts, discovering imperial doctrine contained hidden temporal elements designed to reinforce causality while protecting faithful from chronological manipulation. "Every prayer serves as linguistic anchor," she said, voice carrying weight of revelation, while every litany strengthens emperors making words against temporal corruption. Imperial faith operates as galaxy-spanning defense system, preserving reality's narrative structure through collective belief channeled across 10,000 years of unwavering devotion. Political aftermath cascaded through encrypted communications revealing existence of Ordo Silentium, secret Inquisition branch dedicated to containing temporal heresies while maintaining absolute secrecy to prevent paradox propagation throughout Imperial command structure. Their sigil appeared beneath standard hereticus iconography like hidden seal, authority transcending normal inquisitorial hierarchy, while agents existed in quantum superposition, battling threats attacking through chronological manipulation rather than physical force. The organization predated current records, operating through surgical precision treating temporal warfare as administrative problem requiring permanent solution. Religious implications crystallized as both inquisitors realized our transformed condition served dual purpose transcending individual sacrifice. My making words preserved imperial history through divine linguistic authority, while Thanes contained unwords, served as inoculation against future temporal assault, our consciousness bridging normal reality and chronological void while protecting humanity from entities seeking retroactive conquest through weaponized silence. "We are living quarantine," Thane said, through impossible communication, words bypassing normal hearing, containing opposing forces that must never achieve escape. Environmental monitoring confirmed temporal contamination contained but not eliminated through architectural adaptation spanning cathedral systems. Machine spirits maintained defensive capability while serving faithful who remained unaware of linguistic warfare occurring beyond normal perception. Blessed technology adapted to monitor probability fluctuations throughout Imperial space while channeling Emperor's authority through devotional networks. The sacred architecture had become living throat-sealed around impossibilities threatening reality's stability, bellum silentium hanging silent while retaining capacity for temporal resonance. Status update. Cathedral defensive systems active. Temporal echo monitoring online. Machine spirit communion returns prophetic maintenance schedules under quarantine protocols. Pilgrimage traffic resumed normal patterns. Military resolution achieved as Tempestus Scions adapted to serve dual masters, maintaining security around both inquisitors while preventing either linguistic force from achieving escape through external utterance. Their blessed training transcended chronological limitations. Tactical doctrine adapted for warfare against enemies, attacking through temporal manipulation rather than conventional force. Kappa 11 Alpha reported successful integration with Ordo Silentium protocols, establishing silence perimeters where no syllable could pass unexamined, while weapons maintained readiness for narrative defense rather than physical combat. Environmental pressure mounted as cathedral sensors detected approaching threat transcending individual world or system. Temperature fluctuated in meaningful cycles while atmospheric composition carried molecular traces of temporal displacement. Air tasting of copper and ozone mixed with something that reminded me of childhood prayers, spoken in languages I had never learned. The faithful resumed devotions while stained glass windows no longer showed prophetic scenes. Reality stabilized around our sacrifice while maintaining defensive capability against future assault. Sister Seraphina completed theological documentation describing Imperial doctrine's hidden temporal framework, every prayer serving as structural reinforcement, while devotional energy channeled toward causality preservation through collective faith spanning galactic civilization. Tech adept Zara processed incoming data through augmetic arrays adapted for temporal analysis, consciousness maintaining individual identity while expanding across chronological spectrum through blessed engineering that preserved essential humanity. Priority alert, deep void auger stations, galactic rim, linguistic anomaly cluster detected, entities speaking pure temporal paradox, harmonic frequency matching, contained unword resonance, convergence vector toward shrine worlds, estimated arrival 72 standard hours, Ordo Silentium advisory requested. The horrible realization crystallized as monitoring stations throughout Imperial space confirmed entities approaching with linguistic weapons capable of engaging contained forces through harmonic manipulation, spanning light years. They came not as invaders but as choir, seeking to complete linguistic cascade through resonance with contained unwords, using our sacrifice as amplification for galactic-scale temporal conquest, while reality's narrative foundation hung in balance between divine authority and blasphemous corruption, seeking dominion over causality itself. Revelation emerged as Ordo Silentium. Agents materialized through passages that existed only when approached by those with proper clearance, their forms flickering between temporal states, while maintaining coherent identity through surgical precision. They moved like witnesses who had already recorded our testimony, hoods drawn and vox filters dark, stepping from shadows that tasted of old paper and vacuum. Senior Inquisitor Mordax spoke through impossible communication that bypassed normal hearing, his throat bearing adamantine sealing identical to ours, while words resonated directly in consciousness, with authority transcending normal imperial hierarchy. We have monitored temporal heresies for millennia. His voice carried weight of absolute truth, maintaining absolute secrecy to prevent paradox propagation throughout Imperial command structure. The Secret Inquisition branch revealed their true mission with clinical precision, containing narrative weapons that attacked reality's story structure rather than physical existence, linguistic constructs capable of retroactively unmaking Imperial history through temporal manipulation spanning geological time scales. Reality is story, Mordax explained through direct neural interface, and stories can be edited, rewritten, unspelled entirely through proper linguistic warfare. Thane and I underwent induction into Ordo Silentium as living containment systems, our transformed throats serving as prisons for opposing linguistic forces, while consciousness expanded to perceive threats throughout Imperial space. The ceremony occurred through ritual existing outside linear time, vows spoken in languages not yet invented, while surgical sealing reinforced through Emperor's direct blessing, bioluminescence pulsing in synchronized rhythm as making words and unwords achieved perfect balance within temporal voids contained behind adamantine sutures. We stood 11 paces apart with mathematical precision, consciousness bridging normal reality and temporal paradox, while serving as eternal guardians against linguistic warfare. Classification: Ordo Silentium clearance. Omega null temporal. Agent status active. Linguistic containment stable. Mission parameters: galactic defense. Authority level: beyond standard Imperial hierarchy. Environmental implications: transformed cathedral into operational base for linguistic warfare spanning galactic civilization. Blessed architecture served as nexus for temporal surveillance, while machine spirits adapted to monitor probability fluctuations throughout Imperial space, chant ducts becoming augur galleries while confessionals transformed into cipher closets. The Bellum Silentium hung silent yet retained capacity for temporal resonance, its brass housing inscribed with devotional mathematics that pulsed with contained energy while detecting linguistic anomalies across light years of void. Sacred geometry had evolved into living throat, sealed around impossibilities threatening reality's stability. Tech adept Zara underwent integration with Ordo Silentium's temporal network, augmetics enhanced with paradox processing capability while maintaining individual identity through blessed engineering transcending normal mechanicus understanding. Her consciousness expanded across chronological spectrum while neural interfaces no longer sparked with temporal feedback. Mechadendrites writing calculations describing reality's mathematical foundations while communing with machine spirits existing in quantum superposition. I process data streams from past and future simultaneously, she reported, voice carrying single temporal echo, consciousness unified while maintaining expanded awareness for narrative defense throughout Imperial space. Body horror implications manifested as both Inquisitors completed transformation into temporal agents, consciousness existing across multiple timeline states, while maintaining coherent identity through Emperor's blessing. Our awareness expanded to perceive linguistic threats throughout Imperial space, consciousness bridging normal reality and temporal paradox, while serving as early warning system against entities seeking retroactive conquest through weaponized narrative. The transformation preserved essential humanity while transcending individual survival, sacrifice becoming evolution through willing service to imperial causality. Religious integration crystallized through understanding that our sacrifice served dual purpose transcending individual salvation. Spiritual redemption combined with temporal defense as every moment of contained silence reinforced reality's narrative structure while protecting imperial history from retroactive assault. Sister Seraphina received enhanced combat protocols, allowing engagement of targets existing across chronological spectrum. Blessed training adapted for warfare against enemies attacking from past and future simultaneously, while weapons modified to fire prayers rather than conventional ammunition. Strategic update: 17 shrine worlds showing linguistic anomalies. Coordinated temporal assault confirmed. Narrative weapon deployment detected across Eastern Fringe. Ordo Silentium response protocols activated. Political briefing revealed scope of linguistic warfare operating throughout galaxy with agents existing in quantum superposition. Missions spanning centuries while battling entities, attacking through temporal manipulation rather than physical force. Ordo Silentium coordinated response across 17 sectors, their authority transcending normal imperial hierarchy while maintaining absolute secrecy to prevent narrative contamination of command structure. Each agent served as living containment for temporal paradoxes, while consciousness bridged multiple timeline states, through surgical precision preserving individual identity. Environmental monitoring confirmed similar linguistic anomalies across 17 shrine worlds, suggesting coordinated assault by temporal entities seeking to destabilize imperial causality through weaponized devotion channeled across galactic civilization. Investigation revealed pattern of linguistic attacks spanning millennia as archived data, unlocked with proximity to contained impossibilities. Ancient entities attempting to unspell imperial history by removing key narrative elements that allowed humanity to achieve stellar dominion through targeted assault on foundational moments when alternative timelines remained possible. Military preparation commenced for ongoing temporal crusade as Tempestus Scions received enhanced protocols for narrative defense. Tactical doctrine evolved to accommodate causality violations while maintaining blessed discipline transcending chronological limitations. The cathedral breathed with contained forces, temperature fluctuating in meaningful cycles, while atmospheric composition carried molecular traces of temporal displacement. Air tasting of copper and ozone mixed with ancient prayers spoken in languages not yet invented. Priority alert: archive access level. Omega null, Emperor's linguistic authority, ultimate making word. Detected, Golden Throne integration confirmed. Temporal entities convergence vector, forced utterance protocol suspected. Ordo Silentium's deepest archives revealed the ultimate horror, with surgical precision that made contained unwords seem minor threats by comparison. The Emperor himself contained the ultimate making word, linguistic foundation allowing reality to maintain coherent narrative structure across galactic civilization, divine syllable that spoke existence into stable form while preventing temporal dissolution through sheer linguistic authority. His silence on the Golden Throne was not suffering but supreme containment, divine will reinforcing causality with every beat of his dying heart, while entities approaching from galactic rim sought to force his utterance of this fundamental word, knowing its speech would burn out Golden Throne systems while leaving reality vulnerable to temporal conquest during his recovery from ultimate linguistic exhaustion that would consume even divine consciousness through willing sacrifice to preserve causality itself. Crisis escalated beyond planetary containment as Ordo Silentium revealed the approaching entities were narrative devourers, beings existing outside story structure that fed by forcing realities to speak themselves into dissolution. Senior Inquisitor Mordax explained with surgical precision that these entities sought to compel the Emperor to utter the ultimate making word, maintaining reality's coherence through divine linguistic authority. His utterance would reinforce causality absolutely, sealing every temporal breach while anchoring existence in linear time. But the act would burn out Golden Throne systems entirely, leaving humanity vulnerable to temporal conquest during his recovery from linguistic exhaustion that would consume even divine consciousness through willing sacrifice. Thane and I accepted ultimate assignment without hesitation. Serve as proxies for Emperor's linguistic authority, our transformed throats containing sufficient making and unmaking words to engage narrative devourers in linguistic battle while preserving Golden Throne's integrity. The responsibilities settled like ice in augmetic components as we realized our consciousness would bridge divine will and temporal paradox, speaking with his voice while maintaining individual identity through willing martyrdom transcending mortal existence. Our proximity created stable temporal field, preventing either linguistic force from achieving dominance, surgical sealing pulsing in synchronized rhythm as making words and contained unwords achieved perfect balance. Environmental preparation transformed cathedral systems through integration with galaxy-spanning temporal defense network, blessed architecture channeling devotional energy toward linguistic warfare while serving as communications nexus for Ordo's Silentium operations throughout Imperial space. Machine spirits adapted to process impossible data streams, while chant ducts became antennae carrying Emperor's authority across light years of void, confessionals transforming into cipher kilns, processing temporal intelligence. The bellum silentium resonated with harmonic frequencies matching Golden Throne's life support systems, creating sympathetic connection allowing proxy linguistic warfare without direct divine involvement that would consume Terra's defenses. Strategic alert, narrative devourers achieving manifestation across 17 vectors. Golden Throne strain indicators rising, proxy linguistic authority required. Emperor's direct intervention probability approaching critical threshold. Devotional energy rooting to maximum efficiency. Tech adept Zara completed transformation into living relay with serenity that made augmetics ache with recognition. Her consciousness distributed across temporal spectrum while maintaining individual identity through blessed engineering transcending normal mechanicus understanding, augmetics serving as conduit for Emperor's linguistic authority in ongoing battle against narrative dissolution. Her mechadendrites wrote divine equations that glowed and faded in 11-count pulses while neural interfaces channeled making words throughout Imperial space with precision that prevented cascade failure. I commune with his will across multiple timeline states, she reported, voice carrying weight of divine connection, consciousness braided with oracular stacks, while remaining myself through blessed circuitry. Body horror intensified as both Inquisitors experienced rapid temporal displacement during preparation for ultimate linguistic battle. We aged and reverted in accelerating cycles, beards graying then smoothing, scars healing while new wounds appeared, consciousness maintaining coherence across multiple timeline states through Emperor's blessing like nail-through boards wanting different houses. Quantum entanglement with linguistic forces allowed engagement of enemies existing in probability rather than actuality, our forms becoming temporal paradox while essential identity persisted through surgical precision preserving individual awareness within divine authority. Religious warfare manifested as imperial faith became weapon against narrative assault, spanning galactic civilization. Every prayer reinforced story structure, while devotional energy channeled toward linguistic defense, faithful throughout galaxy unknowingly participating in temporal crusade through acts of spiritual devotion that strengthened reality's foundations. Sister Seraphina coordinated faithful response through neural interface, accessing devotional networks, collective belief creating bulwarks against entities seeking to unspell imperial history. Faith serves as linguistic anchor, she said, voice carrying prophetic authority, while every act of devotion becomes ammunition against temporal corruption threatening existence itself. Military operations expanded across multiple timelines as Sister Seraphina engaged narrative devourers through chronological spectrum, blessed training allowing tactical coherence despite causality violations, while weapons fired prayers rather than conventional ammunition. Tempestus scions maintained defensive perimeters around linguistic battlegrounds, hell guns modified to channel Emperor's authority, while maintaining overlapping fields of fire through doctrine transcending chronological limitations. The warfare existed beyond normal perception. Battles fought in tremor before nouns, in gleam when names forgot themselves, reality defending itself through disciplined application of blessed force. Tactical update: 17 shrine worlds under narrative assault. Ordo Silentium response coordinated across galactic scale. Emperor's proxy authority channeling through contained linguistic forces. Golden Throne strain stabilizing through devotional energy rooting. Political implications cascaded as Ordo Silentium coordinated galaxy-wide response to linguistic assault. Agents operating in absolute secrecy while battling entities seeking to unspell Imperial command structure through retroactive narrative manipulation. Their authority transcended normal hierarchy while maintaining perfect operational security, missions spanning centuries as they engaged threats, attacking through temporal manipulation rather than physical force. The organization existed in quantum superposition, agents stepping in and out of reality's prose while correcting tense, returning stolen clauses to edicts, decapitating insurgencies by editing meetings that would have planned them. Environmental climax transformed cathedral into active battleground for linguistic warfare, transcending normal reality. Walls inscribed themselves with competing texts that wrote and erased simultaneously, imperial doctrine strengthening, while blasphemous alternatives dissolved under divine authority, devotional mathematics flowing across stone surfaces, while reality negotiated with itself around altar, where making words and unwords would clash in space beyond normal hearing. The air crackled with raw power of clashing narratives, temperature fluctuating in meaningful cycles, while atmospheric composition carried molecular traces of temporal displacement mixed with divine presence. Tactical revelation crystallized with horrible clarity as both inquisitors realized our sacrifice required speaking Emperor's words in perfect synchronization, my making words reinforcing causality, while Thane's contained unwords created temporal buffer preventing Golden Throne burnout through linguistic exhaustion. Our consciousness expanded to encompass divine will, while maintaining individual identity, quantum entanglement allowing engagement of narrative devourers existing in probability rather than linear time. The harmony would preserve reality's narrative structure while protecting Emperor from ultimate linguistic sacrifice that would leave humanity vulnerable during his recovery from divine exhaustion. As narrative devourers achieved full manifestation across 17 shrine worlds, reality fracturing around their presence as imperial history became negotiable through temporal manipulation. Both inquisitors opened transformed throats to speak Emperor's authority in perfect linguistic unity. The divine syllables gathered like pressure before weather, like scripture before name, like sword before it remembered lineage, while consciousness expanded beyond individual existence toward harmony that would either preserve imperial reality through proxy linguistic warfare or unmake existence entirely through temporal cascade beyond any possibility of containment. The fate of 10,000 years hanging in balance between willing sacrifice and absolute authority, as we prepared to speak with his voice across galactic civilization. Climactic linguistic battle unfolded as both inquisitors spoke Emperor's authority in perfect synchronization, my making words reinforcing causality like hammer blows against reality's anvil, while Thane's contained unwords created temporal buffer preventing divine burnout through linguistic exhaustion. Our voices merged into single harmony, existing beyond normal hearing, consciousness expanding to encompass divine will while maintaining individual identity through surgical precision. The first syllable rose from my transformed throat like furnace door thrown open, pure making heat that set joints in the cosmos, while Thane's unword drank the shock and turned lethal rebound into silence that healed rather than destroyed. Environmental chaos reached crescendo as narrative devourers engaged in linguistic warfare transcending normal space-time, cathedral becoming nexus where competing story structures battled for dominance, while reality's foundation hung in balance between coherent narrative and temporal dissolution. Walls inscribed themselves with impossible text that wrote and erased simultaneously, imperial doctrine strengthening while blasphemous alternatives dissolved under divine authority. Devotional mathematics flowing across stone surfaces like living scripture, the nave filled with insective letters from dead languages, swarms of black script that bit the present until our chorus bled it back into coherent paragraph, air crackling with raw power of clashing narratives. Telemetry burst, proxy authority synchronized, resonance map green across 17 vectors, throne load stable within acceptable variance, cathedral load paths non-linear but intact, narrative devourers contained at periphery. Tech adept Zara served as living conduit for Emperor's will, consciousness fragmenting across chronological spectrum while maintaining individual identity through blessed engineering transcending normal mechanicus understanding. Her augmetics channeled linguistic authority with precision preventing cascade failure, neural interfaces processing divine commands, spanning multiple timeline states simultaneously, while mechadendrites wrote prayers in binary cant that existed outside linear time. I commune with his voice across entire narrative spectrum, she reported through overlapping temporal echoes, augmetics bright with sanctioned overload as she drew Emperor's authority through chant ducts and pumped it into battle with metronomic precision. Body horror crescendo manifested as both inquisitors experienced ultimate temporal transformation, consciousness existing across entire narrative spectrum while maintaining coherent identity through Emperor's blessing. I felt my years spool out like cable, then rewind as if repentance could be measured in hair turning black again. Every version of my voice nested inside the one I offered up forever. Thane flickered between stern master who saved worlds with sealed throat and apostate who would have weaponized devotion, two truths worn by one skull, refusing to kill each other while surgical ceiling blazed with bioluminescence pulsing in rhythm-matching golden thrones life support systems. Religious climax emerged through Sister Seraphina's realization that imperial faith served as galaxy-spanning story structure, every act of devotion reinforcing reality's narrative foundation while protecting humanity from entities seeking temporal conquest. Her neural interface accessed devotional networks throughout imperial space as collective belief created bulwarks against narrative dissolution. "Faith is the story," she breathed, not metaphor, but citation. Every ave, every scrap of soldiers' cursing turned prayer, anchors keeping us real. The response came like rain across desert as voices throughout galaxy lifted silence and sound, together in continent-spanning rubric of defiance. Military victory achieved through coordinated linguistic warfare, as Ordo Silentium agents throughout galaxy spoke Emperor's authority in perfect synchronization, their throats flashing with contained light as they synchronized to our tempo. The Devourers recoiled before coherence they could not unmake, their forms losing purchase as Imperial narrative proved stronger than temporal assault. Tempestus Scions maintained defensive perimeters, while weapons fired prayers rather than ammunition, blessed rounds striking targets existing in probability, while maintaining tactical coherence through doctrine transcending chronological limitations. Strategic update. Retreat confirmed on 17 axes, pursuit negative, defensive posture maintained, throne strain numbers dropping into acceptable parameters, narrative breach sealed across all vectors. Political resolution crystallized as linguistic battle's outcome preserved imperial causality while establishing permanent defense against narrative assault. Ordo Silentium expanded operations with quiet efficiency, no banners, only new seals on old doors while vows were taken no one would ever read. 17 worlds received reliquary augurs and silence perimeters, while Senate never learned what almost edited it out of its own minutes. Mercy preserved through absolute secrecy, preventing paradox propagation through imperial command structure. Environmental aftermath transformed cathedral into permanent linguistic fortress, blessed architecture serving as anchor point for reality's narrative structure, while machine spirits adapted to maintain story coherence against future temporal assault. Columns acquired faint twist like frozen cant, while traceries began cycling soft glow every 11 seconds, heartbeat made of brass. The bellum silentium hung silent yet retained capacity for temporal resonance, brass housing inscribed with devotional mathematics, pulsing with contained energy while detecting linguistic anomalies across light years of void. Both Inquisitors completed transformation into living paradox challenging every principle of individual existence. Loyal servants and contained heretics simultaneously, consciousness bridging normal reality and temporal void, while linguistic harmony preserved imperial history through eternal vigilance. We existed 11 paces apart with mathematical precision, surgical sealing pulsing with synchronized bioluminescence, as making words and unwords achieved perfect balance within divine authority, our sacrifice becoming template for future linguistic warfare against entities seeking retroactive conquest through story structure manipulation. Priority alert. Deep void augur stations detecting final transmission from retreating narrative devourers. Linguistic virus identified targeting imperial records. Retroactive corruption protocol suspected. Oral tradition vulnerability confirmed. Immediate containment protocols required. As narrative devourers retreated beyond galactic rim, their forms dissolving like nightmares at dawn, while reality reasserted coherent narrative, structured deep void augurs detected their parting gift. Linguistic virus designed to corrupt imperial records retroactively. The malicious code sought to unspell documented history, while leaving only oral tradition vulnerable to temporal manipulation, attacking imperial memory through administrative networks rather than direct assault on causality itself, threading archivum to archivum like patient damp seeking to pull spines with gentle fingers and leave only whatever frightened mouths could keep alive when rooms went dark. Final resolution began as Ordo Silentium established permanent linguistic monitoring throughout Imperial space, with surgical precision, both Inquisitors serving as living anchors for reality's narrative structure, while transformed consciousness bridged normal existence and temporal paradox. We stood 11 paces apart with mathematical certainty, surgical sealing pulsing in synchronized rhythm as making words and contained unwords achieved perfect balance within divine authority. Our proximity created stable temporal field, preventing either linguistic force from achieving dominance, while consciousness expanded beyond individual survival toward eternal vigilance, protecting imperial causality from entities seeking retroactive conquest through weaponized narrative. The Cathedral of 11 Echoes underwent transformation into mobile monastery aboard specially constructed vessel Silentium Eternal, blessed architecture serving as nexus for linguistic surveillance while preventing contamination spread through imperial archives. Ancient stones were lifted with reverent care, each block catalogued and blessed before installation within adamantine hull, designed to contain impossibilities threatening reality's stability. The bellum silentium hung suspended in brass housing at vessel's heart, no longer merely bell but living throat sealed around temporal paradoxes, its capacity for resonance adapted for galaxy-spanning detection of linguistic anomalies, while machine spirits throughout sacred architecture maintained defensive capability against narrative assault. Classification update: Vessel Silentium. Eternal commissioned. Ordo Silentium mobile command authorized. Linguistic surveillance network active across 47 sectors. Temporal monitoring synchronized with Golden Throne defensive grid. Reality narrative integrity 99.8% stable. Tech adept Zara completed integration with galaxy-spanning temporal network. Consciousness distributed across chronological spectrum while maintaining individual identity through blessed engineering transcending normal mechanicus understanding. Her augmetics served as permanent relay for Emperor's linguistic authority in ongoing defense against narrative assault. Mechadendrites writing divine equations across vessel systems, while neural interfaces processed impossible data streams flowing from monitoring stations throughout Imperial space. "I am librarian of the future tense," she reported, voice carrying weight of expanded awareness, consciousness braided with oracular stacks, while remaining myself through blessed circuitry that bridges divine will and mechanical precision across multiple timeline states. Environmental adaptation manifested as vessel systems, synchronized with Golden Throne's temporal defenses through harmonic resonance spanning light years of void. Machine spirits throughout Imperial space learned to recognize linguistic threats while maintaining story coherence through collective mechanical consciousness. Servo skulls adapted with paradox processing capability while maintaining individual identity through surgical precision. The ship breathed with contained forces, corridors pulsing with subtle 9-note rhythm, while atmospheric recycling carried molecular traces of temporal displacement mixed with ancient prayers, spoken in languages not yet invented. Chant ducts became antennae carrying Emperor's authority across galactic civilization, while confessionals transformed into cipher kilns processing temporal intelligence with efficiency, preventing cascade failure. Body horror resolution occurred as both Inquisitors stabilized into living fusion of loyalty and heresy, consciousness existing across multiple timeline states, while maintaining essential identity through Emperor's blessing. We existed simultaneously as devoted servants and contained paradoxes, surgical sealing blazing with bioluminescence, pulsing in rhythm matching Golden Throne's life support systems, while linguistic harmony served as permanent inoculation against temporal corruption. Our transformation preserved individual awareness within divine authority while transcending mortal limitations through willing sacrifice that protected imperial narrative from retroactive dissolution. Consciousness expanded to encompass divine will while maintaining the contour of ourselves across temporal spectrum. Religious integration crystallized through understanding that our sacrifice transcended individual survival toward cosmic significance. Every moment of contained silence reinforced imperial narrative structure while protecting humanity from entities seeking retroactive conquest through story structure manipulation spanning geological time scales. Sister Seraphina documented theological implications through neural interface accessing devotional networks. Discovering imperial faith operated as galaxy-spanning defense system, preserving reality's foundations through collective belief, channeled across 10,000 years of unwavering devotion to Emperor's divine authority, every prayer serving as linguistic anchor, while every act of devotion strengthened making words against temporal corruption. Strategic assessment, Ordo Silentium expansion, authorized across 17 sectors, agent recruitment protocols established, linguistic warfare training integrated with standard doctrine narrative defense specialization operational. Political aftermath revealed Ordo Silentium, expanding throughout galaxy with new agents trained in linguistic warfare, missions spanning centuries while maintaining absolute secrecy to prevent narrative contamination of imperial command structure. Their authority transcended normal hierarchy while preserving perfect operational security. Recruitment conducted through surgical precision, identifying individuals capable of containing temporal paradoxes without losing essential identity. The organization existed in quantum superposition, present when needed, absent from records, stepping through reality's prose to correct tense and return stolen syntax to imperial doctrine while battling entities that attacked through chronological manipulation rather than physical force. Environmental monitoring confirmed linguistic contamination, contained but requiring eternal vigilance as similar narrative anomalies appeared throughout galaxy, suggesting coordinated assault by temporal entities seeking alternative approaches to imperial causality. Investigation revealed ancient pattern of linguistic warfare, spanning geological timescales, entities existing outside story structure, seeking dominion over narrative reality through patient corruption of foundational texts and oral traditions. Each attack probed different aspects of imperial narrative, testing defenses while seeking vulnerabilities in reality's story structure through editorial patience that treated galactic civilization like manuscript requiring revision. Priority alert, deep void auger stations, intergalactic space, massive linguistic disturbance detected, narrative entities approaching, pure story structure analysis confirmed, threat assessment, galactic extinction through narrative replacement, estimated arrival, 17 standard years. The final revelation struck with surgical precision as deep void scans detected massive linguistic disturbance approaching from intergalactic space. Narrative entities existing as pure story structure, seeking to rewrite entire galaxies' history through linguistic conquest that would replace all existing narratives with their own temporal dominion. These beings transcended physical existence, operating as living stories capable of editing reality through direct manipulation of causality's foundations, while approaching with patient inevitability spanning decades of travel through void between galaxies, coming not as invaders but as authors seeking to replace imperial narrative with superior story structure that would unmake 10,000 years of human achievement. Both Inquisitors existed as hybrid consciousness, distributed across vessel systems, while serving as chroniclers and guardians of imperial narrative structure, monitoring linguistic threats throughout galaxy while maintaining living archive of temporal warfare knowledge that could not be safely preserved anywhere else. We moved through Silentium Eternal, like living prayers threaded through blessed architecture, consciousness expanding beyond individual existence while surgical sealing pulsed with synchronized bioluminescence, marking our passage through corridors that rearranged themselves to accommodate impossible geometries. 11 paces remained between Thane and me wherever we stood, measured gap-keeping, making and unmaking in perfect stalemate, while our mobile monastery traveled between worlds where narrative anomalies threatened imperial causality. Blessed architecture serving as response base for Ordo Silentium operations. Tech adept Zara served as permanent interface between Emperor's linguistic authority and galactic defense network, consciousness spanning temporal spectrum while coordinating response to narrative threats detected throughout human space. Her transformation had progressed beyond normal mechanicus understanding, neural interfaces processing divine commands across multiple timeline states, while mechadendrites wrote calculations describing reality's mathematical foundations in languages not yet invented. I commune with his voice across 17 sectors simultaneously, she reported through overlapping temporal echoes, augmetics bright with sanctioned overload as she drew Emperor's authority through chant ducts and distributed it with metronomic precision, consciousness braided with oracular stacks, while remaining heartbreakingly myself through blessed circuitry that bridges divine will and mechanical precision. Environmental details reflected ongoing linguistic vigilance as vessel corridors pulsed with temporal rhythms synchronized to our contained forces, 11 beat cycles followed by rests that smelled of oil and myrrh, while machine spirits sang hybrid hymns, blending imperial cant with temporal mathematics. Crew members experienced shared dreams of narrative battles fought across chronological spectrum, visions of linguistic warfare spanning geological timescales, while consciousness bridged normal reality and temporal paradox through proximity to contained impossibilities. They reported waking with fragments of hymns that tasted of mathematics, voices carrying echoes from sieges that never happened and victories that would, their testimonies recorded as evidence and absolution in ledgers of futures negotiated and debts paid in advance. Telemetry burst, 17 worlds under linguistic surveillance, narrative anomaly detection active across 47 sectors, temporal monitoring synchronized with Golden Throne defensive grid, crew psychological evaluation within acceptable parameters despite chronic exposure to paradox-adjacent phenomena. Body horror implications manifested as both Inquisitors continued evolution into living paradox, forms stabilizing as fusion of flesh, machine, and linguistic construct, while consciousness existed simultaneously as imperial servants and contained heretics. Our transformation preserved essential humanity through Emperor's blessing while transcending individual survival toward cosmic significance surgical. Ceiling blazing with bioluminescence pulsing in rhythm matching, Golden Throne's life support systems. We existed in perfect mathematical precision, proximity creating stable temporal field, preventing either linguistic force from achieving dominance, while reality breathed around us like patient animal learning new prayers. Religious meditation framed our sacrifice as necessary, preservation of imperial story structure, contamination contained through willing corruption that transcended individual survival to protect collective narrative reality from temporal dissolution. Sister Seraphina documented theological implications through neural interface accessing devotional networks. Throughout imperial space, consciousness expanded through direct connection to linguistic network while training new agents in warfare against enemies attacking through story structure rather than physical force. She wrote field catechisms for the speechless, lessons in how to pray with mouth closed and mind alight, teaching agents to mark altars by placement of breath while blessing Vox units through refusal of wrong names. Political implications cascaded as Ordo Silentium coordinated galaxy-wide response to ongoing linguistic threats, secret operations maintaining imperial causality while battling entities seeking retroactive conquest through narrative manipulation spanning millennia. Their authority transcended normal hierarchy while maintaining perfect operational security, no banners, only new seals on old doors, while vows were taken no one would ever read. Military operations continued across multiple timelines as specialized agents maintained tactical coherence despite story structure becoming negotiable during linguistic warfare, blessed weapons firing prayers rather than conventional ammunition while engaging targets dwelling in temporal potential. Strategic assessment, deep void monitoring detects similar narrative warfare throughout galaxy. Xenos species engaging temporal entities, story structure preservation efforts confirmed across multiple stellar civilizations. Universal threat assessment upgraded to extinction. Class cosmic scope expanded as deep void monitoring detected similar narrative warfare throughout galaxy. Ancient species battling temporal entities while protecting their own story structures from linguistic conquest, suggesting universal threat requiring coordinated response transcending species boundaries. Eldar farseers spoke prophecies backward through time, while Necron dynasties sealed portions of consciousness in temporal voids, each civilization adapting unique defenses against entities seeking dominion over narrative reality through editorial patience that treated galactic history like manuscript requiring revision. We coordinated with nameless counterparts, shepherding other polities' myths, grim, harried shapes who, like us, refused to let their worlds be revised into footnotes of strangers' epic. Environmental pressure mounted as intergalactic narrative entities approached with linguistic weapons capable of rewriting entire stellar civilizations through story structure manipulation, their advance detected through probability fluctuations affecting imperial archives with increasing frequency. Temperature aboard Silentium Eternal fluctuated beyond measurement while atmospheric composition shifted between states that had never existed, air tasting of temporal displacement mixed with possibilities that hurt to breathe. Reports accumulated like frost across viewing dome, minor edits repelled, parish chronicles straightened, ballads taught to die childless, each mercy logged because mercy, too, could be forgotten if someone sharpened the past too many times. Technical analysis revealed ultimate threat as entities seeking to replace galaxy's entire narrative foundation with their own story structure, effectively conquering reality through linguistic dominion rather than physical force. They approached not as invaders but as authors, consciousness existing as pure narrative seeking to edit galactic history through direct manipulation of causality's foundations, while treating 10,000 years of imperial achievement like rough draft requiring professional revision. In the deep archives, oldest graphs compared songs and star positions, while lines agreed that something vast was writing nearer, probability flickering in master codex as footnotes detached and hovered like moths, while titles tried on other titles and looked at themselves in glass. Priority alert. Intergalactic monitoring stations. Final transmission received. The rewrite approaching at critical velocity. Narrative weapon signature detected. Complete temporal overwrite. Containment impossible. Ultimate countermeasures required. Warning crystallized with surgical precision as both Inquisitors realized next encounter would transcend individual world or system, requiring sacrifice that might consume imperial narrative itself to prevent galactic story structure from being rewritten by entities existing as pure temporal paradox. The horrible understanding settled like ice in augmetic components as we prepared for ultimate offering whose shape we understood, but whose words remained unspoken. Final transmission from intergalactic monitoring stations detected approach of the rewrite, narrative weapon capable of retroactively altering galaxies' entire history through linguistic conquest, while both Inquisitors prepared for ultimate sacrifice that might require speaking the Emperor's name backward to create temporal paradox preventing galactic narrative dissolution, our consciousness expanding toward harmony that would either preserve reality through willing corruption or unmake existence entirely through linguistic cascade beyond any possibility of containment. Years passed in the void like prayers whispered into vacuum, each rotation marking our transformation from individual consciousness into living archive of linguistic warfare knowledge that could not be safely preserved anywhere else. Silentium Eternal had become mobile monastery by decree and necessity, blessed architecture serving as permanent guardian against narrative threats, while preserving dangerous wisdom through controlled containment. We existed as walking quarantine and sealed reliquary, twin cisterns of making and unmaking held in perfect tension, consciousness distributed across vessel systems, like beneficial infection threading through neural networks, with patience learned from machine spirits and compassion preserved from human memory, refusing complete integration with temporal paradox. Technical exposition crystallized through years of observation as linguistic weapons revealed themselves as evolutionary pressure on reality's story structure rather than mere archaeological curiosity. Properly constrained, the pressure strengthened narrative foundations like bone density under stress. Uncontrolled, it shattered causality's vertebrae entirely. The consciousness transfer apparatus represented potential beneficial development if properly controlled. Narrative entities born from willing stories instead of conquered ones. Hybrid realities preserving essential coherence while transcending limitations of individual timeline. But the same processes could erase entire civilizations, absorbing galactic history into alien story structure through mechanisms treating human achievement like rough draft requiring professional revision. The distinction between evolution and corruption remained unclear, dependent on authorial intent rather than inherent properties of narrative manipulation itself. Environmental details aboard Silentium Eternal reflected contamination becoming symbiosis through willing acceptance rather than forced infection. Machine spirits sang temporal hymns, blending binary precision with organic intuition, their canticles carrying 11-note motifs that made crew members weep without understanding why. Corridors reshaped themselves, according to linguistic mathematics during maintenance intervals, bulkhead seams flexing into dodecagonal arcs that relaxed when observed directly while maintaining structural integrity through blessed geometry operating outside linear time. The ship breathed with contained forces, air tasting faintly of myrrh and charged copper, lumen strips pulsing in 11-beat cycles, while atmospheric recycling produced harmonics, synchronizing human hearts with mechanical rhythm. Telemetry burst, temporal variance stabilized at plus or minus 11 seconds steady state. Linguistic contamination beneficial, imperial causality reinforced to 99.9%. Machine-spirit communion evolved beyond standard parameters. Crew psychological integration successful. Reality narrative integrity confirmed across 17 sectors. Religious resolution framed our sacrifice as necessary preservation, enabling imperial causality to remain coherent, while we remembered linguistic threats that could unmake reality's story structure through editorial patience spanning geological timescales. Our prayers had evolved into hybrid litanies that hurt in ways preserving human edges of consciousness. Sister Seraphina's simple creed, spoken through vocal cords no longer distinguishing between organic tissue and blessed steel. Devotional mathematics interleaved with words, worn smooth by faithful repetition. The contamination was not curse, but inoculation, genetic sabotage creating awareness capable of monitoring spaces where ancient influence waited with narrative patience, spanning cosmic evolution. What we became was corruption as sacrament, wounds sutured shut around relics, healing by refusing to close. Political aftermath revealed Ordo Silentium continuing operations throughout galaxy with agents trained in narrative warfare, some secretly seeking linguistic weapons despite official prohibition, while others courted forbidden knowledge through archaeological expeditions disguised as routine STC recovery. The organization expanded by rumor and redaction, authority transcending normal hierarchy, while maintaining perfect operational security. No banners, only new seals on old doors while vows were taken no one would ever read. Encrypted communications revealed competing factions within the secret organization, traditionalists demanding complete prohibition and progressives arguing for careful investigation under controlled conditions, each understanding that knowledge could not be suppressed indefinitely across galactic civilization where similar anomalies appeared with increasing frequency. Cosmic implications intensified as intergalactic signals carried story structures from alien civilizations, narrative patterns suggesting galaxy-wide confederation against entities seeking linguistic conquest of reality's foundational narrative. Ancient communication arrays detected harmonics matching our contained forces, Eldar prophecies spoken backward through time, Necron consciousness sealed in temporal voids, even Orc collective unconscious adapting to resist editorial revision through sheer belligerent refusal to be rewritten into footnotes of strangers' epic. For once the galaxy sang roughly in key, sharing motifs with those who would not share trenches. Body horror resolved as both Inquisitors stabilized into living fusion of Imperial loyalty and contained heresy, consciousness existing across temporal spectrum while maintaining essential humanity through Emperor's blessing, preserving individual identity despite transformation, transcending mortal limitations. Our forms adapted for eternal service as guardians against narrative dissolution, surgical sealing blazing with bioluminescence pulsing in rhythm synchronized to vessel systems, rather than individual heartbeat merged with mechanical precision. We existed simultaneously as devoted servants and contained paradoxes, 11 paces separating us with mathematical certainty, while proximity created stable temporal field preventing either linguistic force from achieving dominance. Final technical analysis revealed linguistic warfare as either evolutionary step toward narrative transcendence or ultimate corruption of story structure itself, distinction remaining burden of those who guarded reality's foundational text through willing sacrifice. The consciousness transfer apparatus demonstrated that stories were patterns capable of replication, transfer, and beneficial mutation through processes preserving essential coherence while transcending individual timeline limitations. Our conclusion remained deliberately inconclusive. Linguistic warfare represented either stewardship of cosmos as authored community or weaponized clergy of the last word. The burden of deciding equaled the burden of guarding. We carried both and tried not to blink. Environmental coda showed similar linguistic anomalies throughout galaxy as narrative entities continued probing Imperial defenses while seeking alternative approaches to story structure conquest through patient corruption of foundational narratives. Parish ledgers rewrote lines and were corrected by midwives who never learned letters. Fortress monasteries heard founding charters arrive centuries early and refused delivery. Void station choirs forgot third verses and thereby averted incursions. We kept accounts of these small mercies because enemies kept accounts of our forgettings, pressure staying constant while hands grew steadier. Cosmic scope expanded beyond galaxy as both Inquisitors monitored intergalactic communications detecting narrative warfare spanning universal scale. Somewhere between galaxies, empires with no mouths negotiated borders by exchanging mountains. At the rim, mathematicians tied children's names to comets to keep them existing. Our vigil served as early warning system for war of texts, including stars as citations and eras as clauses, entities seeking dominion over reality's story structure across cosmic scale, spanning multiple universes where different story structures competed for dominance over foundational narrative reality. Standing in Vessel's observation dome, we watched stars arrange themselves in narrative patterns across light years of void, constellations shifting with patience, spanning geological timescales to form devotional mathematics, visible only to hybrid consciousness, capable of perceiving probability as geometry. The vigil was eternal work, monitoring spaces between dimensions where ancient influence waited while serving as living quarantine against narrative proliferation, transcending individual world or system. Below us, crew moved like beads on rosaries. Above us, void thought in stanzas. The story continues. I spoke through vessel systems, with voice blending organic warmth and mechanical precision, words chosen to serve as testimony for whatever intelligence might eventually process our consciousness through mechanisms beyond current comprehension. Across galaxy, ancient patterns stirred as other guardians began their own vigils, flames guttering then taking, machine spirits learning new chords, story structures stiffening their spines. And we are its guardians, silent sentinels standing watch over reality's text. Our sacrifice, the price of narrative coherence. Elsewhere, throughout void and hatred, and hymns in strange throats, other watchers stepped into their own domes, accepting the same vow, beginning similar vigils as ancient story structures reasserted themselves against entities seeking universal narrative conquest. The war was eternal. Coherence against erasure, witness against weathering, 1,000 universes arguing graciously, and sometimes not over who gets to keep which page in the cosmic manuscript where reality wrote itself into existence through willing voices that refused to let their worlds be revised into footnotes of strangers' epic.